We all want our businesses to grow. And today, one of the best ways to grow your business is if you concentrate on value creation. And you're probably thinking, Donna, what are you talking about? Value creation. It's when you can offer solutions and information to your clients that will help them succeed. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to buy your product or service, but you're going to help them. You're going to give them information that will help support them to achieve their goals. My guest today is Nick Martin. Nick Martin is the founder of Wine Owners. And before he started that, he was in the B2B space working with Acxiom and Reed Publishing. And that's where he was able to pave that path to success with his new venture, Wine Owners. But before we get started, my name is Donna Peterson, and you're listening to the B2B Marketing Excellence podcast. I go around the world talking with business owners and marketing directors about their industries, about their companies, and what marketing they see is working. All these tactics and tips are things you can use to help you reach your marketing goals and achieve success. So let's jump in. Good morning, Nick. How are you?
Very well, Donna. Thank you for inviting me. Good to see you.
Good to see you. It is a pleasure to have you because we met so many years ago when you were the managing director at Reed. And so
yeah, it was a while ago, huh? It was a while ago. It was a while ago. 20, 25 years ago?
Oh my goodness.
25 at least.
I'm not that old. I'm sorry. But you're right. So we met when you were the managing director at Reed. And at the time, well, why don't you tell us, what were you doing at Reed? And how do you feel those experiences at Reed helped you scale this platform that you now have for wine owners?
Gosh, that's a good question. So I was running a data division within Reed. So Reed being a large global, I guess, publishing and exhibition business back in those days. And I guess it was, also grappling with the internet, grappling with the threat of Google, grappling with the idea of sort of how it needed to kind of go online and kind of retool to be more of a digital business, which is easier said than done when, you've been printing paper and magazines since, the dot.
Yeah.
The mindset's so different.
If you weren't back then, you don't understand like exactly what you're talking about, how there was such a switch from print to the digital world.
Right. Oh, yeah. And a lot of businesses didn't make it, and a lot of titles didn't make it.
Right.
People were used to a different form of deadline, a different way of writing, a different, blend of content. So a lot of those properties within that, huge Fortune 500 business didn't survive, and some did, which was exciting. So to answer your question, what did I take from that I kind of took with me on the journey into building Wine Owners? I guess the thing that probably underpins a lot of what that business was doing was kind of deep market specialism. It was largely B2B. People were really into the detail of the market that they were in. And then, at the beginning of that kind of digital explosion, I think the thing that hit home for me was how successful businesses that migrated online were using data as the building blocks of their digital proposition. And that, either it was big data or it was highly specialized data. It didn't really matter.
Yeah.
The same thinking kind of applied, which is how do we leverage data in order to, drive, I don't know, operational efficiency? How do I use data in order to have a common language to enable businesses to work together within a network more effectively? The idea of interoperability, or even, I mean, these days, the words this word wasn't being used back then, but these days, how do I use data and those building blocks as the basis of an ecosystem, which is super exciting and interesting in a digital world. So I think those are some of the things that I took with me, which are relevant today. 20 kind of 25 years on, I guess.
Yeah. You're right, because when the digital explosion happened, it opened up so many new advertising channels for us, so many different places that companies could start to promote themselves. And it's all great to have so many different channels so you can do a nice cohesive strategy. But that's where sometimes companies get caught up on what is the right strategy for my particular brand. And so it's very interesting, and I'm sure your knowledge that you gained at Reed gave you some insights on those correct channels for you to utilize. So wine owners, why did you start that? I know you have a passion for wine.
Yeah, I think I bored you, didn't I, many times talking about wine when we would meet up, and I was probably being, I don't know, sniffy about the wine that was being served in a particular restaurant at the table. I don't know. I can't. Anyway, so I've always loved.
I know one. I can tell you one in particular. We were at a gala in London, and someone was serving red wine. One of the waitstaff came over to serve red wine, and they put it on top of ice. And that red wine should never have put on top of ice, and you shut them down right away. So I still remember that night very clearly.
Yes, so that was the start point, really. And then I guess, having worked for large organizations all my life, I just got to the point where I kind of felt like I wanted to do my own thing. And, I had an idea that was kind of, I guess, blending wine and data, as it were. I think that was the starting point. I think that originally we kind of kicked off as a B2C business, a platform for wine enthusiasts and collectors, and the kind of end-to-end thing of, ensuring that there was a whole solution for people in that world, i.e. organizing, figuring out what you have, figuring out what it's worth, and then being able to buy and sell peer-to-peer. And we built a lot of the building blocks at that time around that platform. But it became pretty obvious pretty early on that there was a corresponding need on the business side. And so pretty much even before we launched that platform, we'd already done a deal with a significant UK wine business called Corney and Barrow for managing their clients who were storing wine with them. So we were kind of we kind of became B2B, or we segued into B2B pretty early, and have become almost exclusively B2B since then, really, over the years through the various platforms that we've released since then, one being the wine storage in the US market in particular, and then more recently a SaaS platform for wine sort of retailers, importers and wholesalers.
Interesting. So then your experience, so after you left Reed, you went to Acxiom. Acxiom, I know you were involved in a lot of the consumer insights, the multi-channel, which we were just talking about, and leveraging the CRM platforms and technology that was coming out. So that experience there must have really helped catapult you towards this idea of the wine owner platform.
Yeah, actually, in particular with Wine Hub, the SaaS platform for wine retail. as you say, multi-channel was part of that digital explosion narrative, and the dream at the time at Acxiom was this whole kind of combining of online behavior with offline insights to create personas or behavioral targeting models, and that was also struggling a little bit at the time against ethics and tightening GDPR because it was pretty new back then. I guess that we were talking about sort of around 2007, 2008.
Okay.
And so multi-channel was the thing, I guess, that I took away from that experience. Notwithstanding the wine market is a long tail market.
Yeah.
So business within it are of a completely different scale to the Fortune 500 businesses that we were working with. We were working with Disney and all of those sorts of guys. Our market is super fragmented, specialist, small, much smaller, and it's very traditional.
Okay.
So it's a market that's historically lagged other sectors in terms of adopting technology. So when we sort of were mapping out the opportunity, the needs of the businesses within it, and a lot of them were coming to us and talking about their challenges in being able to find a suitable way of being able to tool up for the kind of the future as they were beginning to imagine it. We therefore designed Wine Hub with multi-channel and of course omni-channel in mind. So that's definitely that experience informed how we engineered, how we architected the platform. I would say, and then the other narrative at Acxiom was around this end-to-end solutioning thing that we were talking about. And that thinking was again very much behind what we've done, whether it was originally the kind of the collector platform, which is you don't just basically provide seller management, you provide cataloging and seller management and market valuations and mechanisms for being able to kind of do what you want to do on the buy and sell side. And then more recently, obviously, the same sort of thinking applies to multi-channel. And how do you reach a broad addressable market? How do you segment those markets and ensure that you kind of build up your own kind of proposition, your product proposition, in order to address those different segments as well. So yeah.
And I totally, now the companies that take the time to really analyze that information and find their specific niche and research their target audience. I'm not talking just by title and industry, but you can figure out your exact audience. That's when you can start the value creation that will really help those people to make a bond with you. They'll say, oh my gosh, they get me. They understand my industry. If you're able to give them that type of value, and that's when they'll stay with you forever.
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, look, it's about how, how can you help a business effectively take advantage of those growth opportunities, and at the same time do that in a way that's operationally efficient, which means it's got to be a really well thought through series of workflows that are supporting a business's ability to deliver and meet expectations time and again. So,
and that's that time that you put in up front that will definitely pay off in the long run.
Yeah, for sure, because from the get-go, you've got happy customers. You've got customers who are talking about you to their friends, to their networks, and you're not battling that kind of leaky bucket
Yeah.
of, you know, well, I got it right for this particular
Mm-hmm.
order for this person, but actually, that wasn't great.
That's when you can
So,
get onto that
mm,
nice sales cycle that goes up like this versus this, if you don't work on that. Now, all your experience at Acxiom and everything you just told me, that can just tell me why Wine Owners is doing so well, because I believe you manage an impressive number of, what is it, 2 billion, right? Of inventory,
I think
400,000.
I think we might be up to about 3 billion now, actually.
3 billion. Okay. And I think it's, what is your wine reference? I had 400,000. Is it larger than
Yeah. At least it's probably a bit bigger, but yeah, sort of 400 to 500,000. Yeah, and lots of wine pricing, I think, as well. So
yeah.
yeah,
I think it was
yeah,
90 million in wine prices annually. I did a
yeah.
little research on it.
Drinking the Kool-Aid, Donna.
Well, just like with my clients, if I'm doing marketing, but if I'm going to do a podcast, it's good to know about the guest, about their companies, what are they doing? And also, I only have people on the podcast who are doing it in a quality fashion, whose companies are going to grow year after year, which obviously you're doing. Now, with your growth, do you expect, what are some surprises or unexpected trends you've come across or you foresee for the future?
Ooh, foresee for the future. That's an interesting one as well, isn't it? So I think in terms of foreseeing for the future, I think that we are entering a world where there's lots of innovation and there are lots of sort of marketplace type sort of platforms that are emerging in different markets, and same is true of wine. I think perhaps more in the US than elsewhere, because the US has its own challenges, regulatory challenges around distribution of alcohol.
Okay.
So there are platforms, that are specific to the US as a consequence that enable distribution whilst managing the challenge of which states one can ship into and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But I think that hasn't really happened in any meaningful way elsewhere. There are B2B platforms, but there hasn't really been a proliferation of B2C platforms. So I think that's going to happen inevitably. So we're quite excited about that and what that might mean, and the challenge that places on logistics and distribution, given wine is typically in glass and heavy, and it's not the easiest thing to move around. But I think that is definitely a global kind of thing that is going to happen over the next few years. I think sort of within the wine market, and maybe specifically within the fine wine market, because that's fun and that's the bit that kind of generates column inches in the press around kind of winers and investment and all that sort of stuff. So I think one of the most interesting things that has struck me recently is the difference between how scarcity-led wine markets and volume or liquidity-led wine markets behave. So, historically, I guess, wine markets where there's plenty of volume were the ones that kind of people kind of bought into, whether sort of top champagnes or Bordeaux or some of the bigger brands in the US, like kind of Opus or Dominus or I don't know, Grange in Australia. But that's sort of changing, and I think one of the reasons maybe why it's changing is that there really aren't any attrition models. There's very little information around how wine is depleting over time. And so if you're in a market where there's plentiful supply, there's a sort of a fairly sort of eternal assumption that it's always there's
there.
always going to be plenty of wine there.
Right.
Exactly. Whereas if you go to the other extreme and you find someone who is making tiny quantities, up a hill somewhere, then you kind of don't need to worry about attrition, because, if there's very little of it, if barely any of it around.
Right.
And so there's definitely been a bit of a trend over the last sort of handful of years towards people kind of picking those markets to buy into. And they'll drink,
Yeah.
but they'll also sort of drink happily knowing that they paid X for it and now it's worth sort of X times 10 or whatever the number is.
I'm sure some people buy them as investments.
Yeah, they do. They do. I think the other realization is actually, though, how little of the wine market is made up out of speculators and investors.
Okay.
Thank goodness, given that wine is there to be enjoyed, right?
Right. Well, plus you can't keep it that long sometimes, then when you order that, you keep it, it's so great. And then when you go to finally have it, how many years later, it's not so great anymore.
Right. So, yeah. So, there's lots, I'm sure there's certainly lots and lots of insights that our business clients are using data to derive. And obviously, their challenges are around market pricing and figuring out what shape their inventory needs to be in. And we're now in a world where, one has physical inventory, but also the kind of concept of virtual inventories that are basically stock that actually you can borrow from other sources, again, depending on the regulatory environment that you're in, which is super helpful in being able to broaden your appeal or experiment without having to tie up working capital in stock, which, as the wine world has globalized, of course, has become much more expensive to do.
Yeah. And that's interesting. And I was going to ask you a question about, geographically, obviously, there's got to be differences. There's got to be differences, but I think you've already kind of hit upon that.
Yeah, the US is the big one, really.
Yeah.
The US has its 3-tier distribution system that dates back to Prohibition, and which means that if you're in the same tier as another business, so if you're a retailer, you can't really sell to another retailer,
right?
And there are definitely interstate shipping challenges, and then there's kind of what best practice could be in the States around compliance and state of destination taxation and that sort of stuff, and then kind of what actually happens, certainly at the kind of the smaller end of things.
So are you doing a lot in the US right now?
Starting to. I mean, so our warehouse management software, so the platform for managing basically wine storage, is really a US product, and we've been doing that in the US for, I guess, about 8 years now. Whereas the retail platform is pretty new into the US, because we've taken our time with that in order to properly understand those differences and make sure that we're able to adapt to the market and perhaps provide, something else beyond just being able to fit into the market structures over there. Yeah. With a view of the global market, because there are certainly in the sort of top 2 or 3 slices of the market, then people are obviously buying from regions all over the world, sourcing and doing business all over the world too.
Yeah. And then do you have competitors here in the United States? Are there other companies with the exact same type of platform as yourself?
Not really, no. I mean, in the States there are lots of businesses that I would sort of describe as e-com first, with a kind of a heavy kind of customer experience front end and quite a thin back end, as it were. And then, of course, there's been a lot of investment, a lot of the noise around direct to consumer, and then there's been quite a bit of investment within business-to-business marketplaces in the US, but actually very little relative focus on mid-sized retail and distribution, I would say.
Well, that's good. So now when we talk about value creation, and as I mentioned before, if you really know your audience, it sounds like you really have found a nice niche audience for yourself.
Yes, I think I think we found an audience. I think we found a market which is quite different. It is quite idiosyncratic in many ways. And whereas I guess, working at places like Acxiom, you're taught that actually everyone thinks that their market is different. Everyone thinks that they're unique, but actually everyone is fundamentally pretty similar to each other. That's true. I mean, that is true at a level. At another level, I have to tell you that the business of wine and spirits is quite specific, I would say, and therefore that's great because you have a choice between the kind of the global big platforms like Microsoft or NetSuite or whatever, and kind of bending that into wine shape, or actually buying into something that from the outset is kind of by the industry for the industry, which is very much the approach that we've taken to your earlier point. And we were lucky enough to get quite a lot of businesses on board in a very short period of time after we quietly released, because we'd been networking and talking, of course, in that sort of build out period. And that provided us, with a very strong market voice, informally, formally through user assemblies, but in one form or another, we've very much been led by the market. Yeah.
See, but that's what people need nowadays. Like when we are talking about just a CRM platform, for instance, we're on HubSpot, have been since 2010. But what you've seen with technology now is everyone is branching off into their specific industries, which is what we all need now. Is we need the technology that's specific to our audience and our industry so that we can do our jobs better. So technology like yours is only going to help free these people up in the wine space to do the next level, to really do their job better. And then if you go and you offer them these solutions and the information they need, they're going to love what you've got. And then they're going to tell their friends and their friends about it. And you're going to get more business that way.
Well, word of mouth is key, of course, and in a nice tight market where everyone has, come into the market for pretty much the same good reason, which is, they fell in love with the idea of it or the product or whatever. Then there is a lot of socializing. There's a lot of collaboration, actually, that goes on between who otherwise would be competitors.
Right.
Well, so there's a lot of that.
Remember when we went to the direct marketing show, we'd all just be there and we all would share ideas. And at times, yes, we would be competitors, but sometimes we were vendors of each other, but we all just really shared ideas. And I strongly feel as a business, if you take on more the philosophy of give, offer value, like you've stressed, that value creation aspect to it, the sales will come in. The customers will come to you.
Absolutely. And we're stronger together, whether within an industry, whether as we saw yesterday with the US Sino summit in San Francisco, we are definitely better off together. And I think that the other thought that occurs is that a lot of people talk, and this is something that just coincidentally I've kind of come across as a theme over the past few months, is that some people talk about competitive advantage being gained through leveraging technology, and I'm really not a great believer in that. I think you're far you're far stronger if you're able to use a platform that's going to provide you with options and paths to growth, and which is kind of, going to work out of the box, and which isn't going to consume an enormous amount of money and energy and project management time and all the rest of it in trying to adapt to your market. Whereas I think competitive advantage is really all about who you are, what you set out to be, what you set out to be in respect of your addressable market and your customers within that, and then how you execute that, and how you deliver value, and how you consistently deliver value to people over time. And that's not really about trying to shape a shiny thing that looks a little bit different to everybody else. That's really much more fundamental than that, I think.
It is. It goes down. It's your core. Who you are. World Innovators, we've been around for 43 years. And when my mom founded the company, she stressed it's quality over quantity. And you're right. It's not the shiny objects, or we can help you with this. It's more our clients know when they work with us, we do everything we possibly can. They can trust us, and we build those relationships that last for years. And that's exactly what you're talking about. It's great to have all the technology. And now with AI, come on, we're getting hit with different technology every single day. But it's that human component still, and those relationships that you build. I feel, one, it makes it more worthwhile going to work, but it will help your company grow year after year.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, Nick, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I learned a lot about the wine industry, but also your platform. And it was very interesting to see your journey up until this point. We'll have to have you back.
It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. It's been brilliant. It's been brilliant to see you again. And thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the B2B Marketing Excellence podcast. Please hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss our next episode. And in the meantime, if you'd like to talk to me, please feel free to send me an email to dpeterson@worldinnovators.com. Till next time, have a great day.